Mahasa Chorte. Father na Phatchy. Long time no see. It's been 2.5 years. And it's over 3 years since I made my reintroduction. Anyway, we won't waste time on apologies. Let's dive straight into Irish consonants. There's plenty to talk about. Right, so to revise my ramble on Irish vowels from 2.5 years ago, Irish vowels can be divided into broad and slender. So the slender vowels are the sounds, not the written letters, the sounds e, I, e, and a, in that order. The tongue is getting further and further, it's going backer and backer with each of those. So e, and you can feel that if you put your finger on your tongue and then touch the person next to you. Put your finger on your tongue and pronounce e, a, o, u, and you'll feel your tongue moving back with each one. So eventually you'll have to. Now, it's very important to know that, let's say, the English graphemes, written letters, I and E are slender, coil, and that A, O, U, or A, O, and U are broad. Because the sound of a consonant changes in Irish depending on whether it's next to a broad or slender vowel. Now, it's important to remember that every single letter, or every single, let's say letter in Irish has, or every single consonant, I should say, has a broad pronunciation where the mouth is configured differently from the slender pronunciation. So in order to pronounce Irish correctly, or as a native speaker, and I don't mean someone that just happens to be born in Ireland, because of course being able to speak a particular language isn't genetic. As I've said before, if English or any other language except Irish is your first language, Irish is a foreign language. Foreign meaning simply unfamiliar. So something can be more or less foreign, of course. But anyway, we won't become overly philosophical yet. So you have to know, as an informed learner, what are the two pronunciations of each consonant in Irish. Okay, again, I'm just rambling, but we can divide Irish consonants into two categories. The consonants that use both the lips, what are called bilabial, and the consonants that use the tongue, which you might call lingual, or tonguey. So let's start with the labial consonants. Now, I'll cut a long story short and then I'll elaborate. When labial consonants are slender being a vague catch-all term, it doesn't have actually any phonetic reality. Slender isn't a word that phoneticians use. So when a labial consonant is slender, what happens is that the lips are further spread than in English. And when a labial consonant is broad, the lips are more protruded than in English. So you have English in the middle and then Irish on either side. The video will probably get taken down now by some complaint made by a prude. But just remember that English is in the middle and Irish is on either side. I suppose You won't really get school children watching this. Well, you might. Very educational. Should be broadcast in every classroom in Ireland. So to give you an example, I have an aunt, a grand-aunt, and I always use her as an example. And when she pronounces the word in English, what's spelled B-A-B-Y, baby, what she actually says is baby, baby. So compare baby, baby, baby to baby, baby, baby. Now, I'm sure you can hear the difference. If you can't, you're an idiot. No, I'm joking. But the reason that sounds different is because the lips are retracted, or basically that they're pulled back and touch the teeth. And that goes for all the labial consonants. I should have said what the labial consonants are. I presume you're all fine phoneticians. Basically P, B, and M. Now, in the same way that we said that you have to know what or that you should know, you would benefit from knowing what the pronunciation of every single consonant is, or from what the broad and slender pronunciations of every consonant are. You would also benefit from knowing what the strong and weak pronunciation of every consonant is. So every consonant has two categories of variable. Is it broad or slender? Is it strong or weak? Now, what do we mean by strong or weak? Nowadays, a weak consonant is shown by putting a H after it. That H isn't actually pronounced itself, except when it's a single H at the start of a word, as in hotte, hat. Other than that, the H is just a symbol. Of course, I'm sure many of you know that the H derives from Irish when written in the Roman script. And the way of showing the chevu before that was to put a little punk, a little dot, over the consonant. Sorry, I've rambled away now. So basically, strong P is, well, that's the thing. You have to specify whether are you pronouncing the slender P or the broad P, because they're what are called phonemes, meaningful sounds, or sounds that can change the meaning of a word. In English, it doesn't matter if I say baby or baby. It just sounds as though I'm pronouncing the word strangely, but it doesn't change the meaning of a word. But in Irish, that can. They're phonemes. So, now, an important point. PH in English, of course, is equivalent to F. And F in English is what is called a labiodental consonant. Labio meaning lip, dental meaning teeth. So the lower lip is raised to the upper teeth, as opposed to the other way around. And the same is true for V. That's not the pronunciation of those consonants in Irish. In Irish, all those consonants are bilabial, meaning they only use the lips. So, PH is, slender PH is, let's say, and broad PH is, right? Again, no lips, it's not and but and. And that's the same pronunciation as F. F is also bilabial, it's the same sound, just two different ways of writing it. Now, the next one, BH at the start of a word, when slender and when broad. And then MH when slender, and MH when broad, v. Now, I would be very surprised if any secondary school student, and especially primary school student, has ever been taught what the traditional difference between B shave, so soft B, and M shave is. I'm sure most students are taught that they're just pronounced as V, which is wrong for several reasons. M is a nasal consonant, meaning that the velum, or basically the soft palate at the back of your mouth, is lowered to allow air come through the nose. And that nasal quality is also in MH, because M is just a softened H. Basically, when you think about it, well, actually, I won't get into it because it's an interesting topic, but I won't go into it yet. So there is a difference. For example, if I pronounce the word bho as an ovo, his cow, ovo. Other dialects in Donegal and informally in Meath, which was part of the Ulster dialect, a wo. But in Munster anyway, it is normally a bilabial fricative, a vo. That differs in speakers who haven't lost the distinction between BH and MH. So BHO differs from MHO further. Sorry, BHO further differs from MHO further. So vo compared to von. Now you'll hear that the vowel in MHO further, von, is nasalized. Now, even amongst that nasalization, for example, had disappeared in Cork or at least in Musgrave, by the start of the 20th century, the 1900s. But a lot of speakers still in the other Gaeltacht maintain it, perhaps not consistently. Now, one of the reasons that it's disappearing is presumably because of English influence. You can be sure that if it were the French that had invaded, that nasal vowels would be alive and well in Irish. And people have no qualms or insecurities about pronouncing nasal vowels when they speak French, but they're very shy about pronouncing them in Irish because it's very bad to be Irish, remember. That's sarcasm for any of you who don't understand. Now, so that's a useful distinction. I would there is no standardized pronunciation of Irish taught in schools, but that's what I would recommend. That distinction between B shave and M shave be maintained, along with learning an actual spoken dialect of Irish, not that they teach in primary and secondary schools. Well, that most teachers teach, not all. We won't damn ye all. Okay, look, I've rambled enough about that. Basically, my whole point. So, I'll pronounce each of those labial consonants. So, P, 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 and Phi, 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 when slender, and Poo, 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 and Foo, Foo, Foo. Then B, 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 V, 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 Voo, Voo, Boo, 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 Voo, Voo, Voo. And then Moo, 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 Voo, Voo, Voo. Oh, sorry, that was the broad one. And then the slender one, Me, Me, Me. My uncle had a cat called Me, Me, Me. And V, V, V. So what happens is that the nasalization of the M, or the nasal quality of the M, is transferred to the vowel, traditionally. That's very important for Clare, East Limerick, Waterford, Kilkenny, Northern Tipperary, most likely, where certain vowels, when nasalized, raised, became different vowels. So like mo for the mo, because the M is nasal, the O became nasal, and that then the nasalized vowel rose to oo, so mu. That happens in other dialects as well. So in extreme West Kerry and parts of Connemara, I won't get into that. Right, they're the labial consonants. The main point to remember, if the labial all the labial consonants in Irish are bilabial, stop eating yourself with your teeth, right? No English self-cannibalism. They're bilabial. When they're slender, the lips are retracted, more retracted than in English, and when they're broad, they're more protruded than in English. Right, they're the labial consonants. Now let's go on to the much more complicated story of the lingual consonants. So we can divide the lingual or tongue consonants, the consonants that use the tongue, themselves into two different categories. Dorsal consonants and cardinal consonants. Dorsal meaning the back of the tongue, and cardinal meaning the front of the tongue. One of the few benefits of the coronavirus is that more people are now aware of the meaning of the word corona, meaning crown. So basically, the corona of the tongue is the front or the top of the tongue, which itself can be divided into the apex, or so an apical consonant, the tip, and what's called the blade of the tongue, the flat part of the tongue behind the tip, laminal. We don't need to talk about those yet. So let's talk about the dorsal. Well, yeah, let's go from front to back. So we started with the labial consonants, and now let's do the front of the tongue. So generally, what are the cardinal consonants? S, T, D, N, L, and R. R is a bit special. It tends to be in languages, no matter what language it is. It always acts unusually. So when those consonants are slender, oh God, there's so much to talk about. Look, I'll just do a simple pronunciation thing first, and then I'll talk about dialectal detail. So slender S. Again, because it's slender, when a consonant is slender in Irish, the lips are more spread than in English. So English often has, so slender S in Irish is sh, sh, which most English speakers would immediately assume to be SH, but SH in English tends to be sh. Now, if any of you speak Polish or some other Slavic language, or some other language that uses this distinction, you can hear that sh and sh are not the same sound. Again, they're not used in English to change the meaning of a word, but in other languages they are. So just make sure that when you're pronouncing your sh in Irish, that your lips are spread. I won't go into too much phonetic detail. And when S is broad, it's alveolar dental. That's an important point, that when all these cardinal consonants, so S, D, T, N, L, R, and there's a reason I'm doing it in that order. Sorry, I'm blank. I forgot. Oh yeah, when all those consonants are slender, they're what are called palatal, meaning that the middle of the tongue is raised to the hard palate. Again, if you put your tongue to the roof of your mouth, you'll feel that the front of your mouth, or the front of the roof of the mouth, is hard, and if you keep going back along the top, it will eventually come across the back soft palate. So shh, shh, shh. Well, it helps if you rummage around a bit inside in your gob. Now let's go on. In broad S, simply s. When those cardinal consonants are broad in Irish, they are, except R is a different story. Alveolar dental. What do I mean by that? Dental again means teeth. The alveolus is the gum ridge that your teeth protrude from. And then, so an alveolar dental consonant is where the alveolus meets the teeth. So there at that point. So for example, if I say su, tu, du, nu, lu, ru, it's a different story. Which is different. Remember that broad cardinal tongue front consonants in Irish are alveolar dental, so su, tu, du, nu, lu, and I'll exclude R, slightly different. But English consonants are all pronounced, all the cardinal consonants are pronounced at the alveolar ridge. So su, tu, du, nu, lu, and ru, which are different from su, tu, du, nu, lu, and ru. An awful lot of people they keep these alveolar consonants. Okay, I won't go off on a ramble about it. German uses them as well. Yeah, okay, I won't get into it. Just watch out for that. What else? Oh yeah, okay. Now let's talk about when they're slender, because that's more complicated. Again, I'll plan a proper video at some stage when I have time. But I'm a busy man, very busy man. So we spoke about S. Now, T, when it's slender, that means that the tongue is raised. So q. Now, Munster Irish tends to have been, the pronunciation of Munster Irish amongst native speakers, what I mean, so not the Irish that you're taught in school if you're a student, tends to have been a bit more affected by English than the other dialects. Well, yeah, I'll come back and talk about that. Well, at least in the pronunciation of slender T and slender D. So instead of being pure palatal consonants, q and y, they've actually become either palatal alveolar, so t and y, or sometimes amongst the most anglicised native speakers, just the same as English, t and d. So you can hear the progression there from pure Irish to pure English, or basically from palatal to alveolar. So q, y, to t, d, and t, d. Basically, it's just different parts of the tongue touching a different part of the mouth. Everything exists in time and space, so if the space is different in your mouth, it's going to produce a different sound. Now, oh God, there's so much to talk about. Okay, I'll go on. Again, I'm trying to be detailed without being organised. Let's talk about soft SH. I'll just post this. I know it's rubbish, but look, it's better than that. Maybe not. Back to S. So, slender S, sh, broad S, s, which is not the same as English s. So, sh, English S in the middle, s, and broad Irish S, s, sh, s, s. Then, when that becomes soft, it has become just and H, I should have mentioned, is the only consonant in Irish that is neither broad nor slender, because what the sound is just the vocal folds wide apart, completely apart, and just the air coming through. And well, of course, if the tongue blocks any part of it, then it tends to become a different consonant. I won't get into it. So slender SH and broad SH are both. If you're a teacher watching this, I implore you not to teach it as saying that the S isn't pronounced. Take the SH as a whole in itself, right? And that digraph, 2 letters, is altogether just pronounced as, because of course the old spelling would have been S-punk, and you would, how would you explain it then? It's just that S-punk, S-shave is pronounced as, okay, that's the way to teach it. Right, on to T. So, T. So what I'll do is I'll give you the Irish sound, the English sound in the middle, and then the broad sound. So T, T. Well, I'll give it with T. So T, T, and Tu, or Tui. But it's Tui. I spoke about that Ui sound in the vowel video, which I have yet to remake. Then soft slender T again has just become he. So just up until about the 12th or 13th century, actually, slender TH was, according to my own, my own suggestions, and I have good reason for it, but I'll talk about that another time, or I can read an article that I'm writing about it. Slender TH was in Middle Irish pronounced as sh, and broad TH was pronounced as and I propose that a lot of Old Irish and Middle Irish scholars would pronounce them as interdental, as they are in English. Probably not. To sum up my theory, the strong cardinal consonants are alveolodental, and the weak cardinal consonants were alveolar. So basically, is an alveolar fricative, an apical alveolar fricative, rather than an interdental, like the English. Keep your tongue inside your mouth. What does this? Keep your forked tongue behind your teeth. You snake. Right. That's enough rambling. Then D, much the same story. So slender G, which in most of Munster has become D, G, then English D, and then Dui, which is the word for a fool. Dui, again, that's alveolar dental, just at the top of the teeth where the teeth meet to go. Dui. Now, when, oh God, did I speak about? I did. At the start of a word, at least, weak slender D is pronounced as like a Y in English. y, except that the Irish y has more friction than the English y. So basically, the Irish, the tongue is higher, it's raised to the palate, so it's a palatal fricative, whereas in English it's a palatal approximant. You can look those things up on the internet. The internet is an amazing thing, and has other uses other than social media, says I, and YouTube. Now, so that's ye. Now, in Middle Irish, up until about the 12th to 13th century, thereabouts, that would have been pronounced, in my theory, as z, or ye. So again, a palatalized alveolar, or palatal alveolar fricative, and when that consonant is broad, so so DH, broad vowel, let's say the, ui fada, not a word. This is even more rambly than the last one. God. The. But what has happened to that the sound is that the has become, instead of being a velarized alveolar fricative, it's just become a velar fricative. So which is the same pronunciation nowadays as what is spelled GHUI father, whatever the various spellings. So that is D. At the start of the word, all these soft consonants tend to have different pronunciations depending on whether they're word initial, start of the word medial, middle of the word, or word final, which is fairly self-explanatory. Then on to, N and L. Traditionally, and in Old Irish, there was a distinction between strong N, or strong broad N. Well, basically, with 4 different kinds of N. You'd strong broad N, weak broad N, strong slender N, weak slender N. Different things have happened to them in different parts of the country when those sounds are in different parts of the world. Basically, again, all cardinal consonants, when slender, are palatal. So the palatal means basically that it's pronounced with the tongue in the same position as y in English. Don't move the middle of your tongue, just move the other parts of your tongue. Stay in that y position. So that would be ñ, similar to the ñ in Castellano, in Spanish, or Castilian. At the start of the word. What has happened to strong N in the middle of the word, where it's spelt NN when it's slender, in most of Munster, except Kerry and a line from Kerry maybe to Clonakilty, everything west of Clonakilty, slender NN has just become slender N, so basically weak N. So there's no difference nowadays between shin, us, and shin, that in Kerry. They're both pronounced as shin. Whereas in other dialects in Munster, and this included Kilkenny as well, actually, it seems, and quite a lot of Leinster. You'll be interested to know. I'll make a video about Leinster Irish sometime. Yes, it actually existed, of course. Sorry, it's when you're trying to cater for too broad an audience. if there's anyone watching. What's that? Slender N, strong. Right, so ñ. But when a cardinal consonant is weak, it tends to be alveolar, or palatal alveolar. It's slender, ñ. Then N when, or strong N when broad, mo. So again, when a broad, when a cardinal tongue front consonant is strong in Irish, it's pronounced again, well, against the denty alveolus, if you want to call it that, basically where the gum, where the teeth, at the top of where the teeth meet the gum. So mo, and it's also velarized, which means that the back of the tongue is raised. Which velarization basically is that something is pronounced in the position of oo, oo. Certainly in Ireland nowadays, oo is becoming less deep, becoming shallower, like the people. So that you'll hear people nowadays, instead of saying thank you, ooh, thank you, you hear thank you, it's becoming a front vowel. But Irish ooh is fine and deep and profound. Sorry, I'll stop rambling. And I'll come back now in a second. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, no. That's strong N, and when it is weak, it is alveolar velarized. So no. I won't go into too much dialectal detail. Basically, Munster has lost that distinction, whereas other dialects, not every other dialect has, particularly in Ulster. Very roughly, Munster tends to have the oldest or the most conservative grammar, whereas Scottish dialects tend to have the most conservative pronunciation, Ulster being somewhere in the middle, and Connacht fairly conservative in pronunciation, not very much at all in grammar. But it looks like they're vague comments. I'll come back to that. Let's stick to pronunciation. Right, onto L. Same story. When a strong cardinal tongue front consonant is slender, it's palatal or palatalized, and when a strong tongue front consonant is broad, it's alveolar dental. So what that is in practice, basically, y. So you can think of it as slender LL, but a single consonant is strong if it's before the first vowel in a word. So li, a word for colour. It's not pronounced like that in Munster, li, but where it's become its weak form, li. Okay, I won't ramble off. What else? So li, English li, then weak, broad L, lu or lui, and strong broad L, lui. All right, against the teeth, lui, which is much deeper than the English l. Now, what's interesting though is that scary l, deep L sound is actually, it's not found in or English dialects in Ireland, except some country speakers actually, because they preserve this l, so like a load of whatever. But normally people from the towns and cities that have l in their speech are imitating either Americans or English people for their own strange reasons. Because in England, some dialects, not all, pronounce LL at the end of a syllable as a velarized, so tongue raised to the velum, L. So, for example, what I would say kill, that's an alveolar, or what I should say, a non-velarized alveolar lateral. So apologies for the terminology. Whereas in some English dialects that becomes ul, so kill. If you're from England, you can comment on that. Kill. Of course, what has happened is that that velarized L, which is velarized basically meaning that the tongue is in the position of oo, or its consonantal counterpart wo, in that it has actually, that L has become an oo or a wo in some dialects. So like kill, as opposed to kill. Interesting. Kill, bottle, as opposed to what I would say bottle. Bottle. Anyway, we want to start talking about English dialects, which are very interesting and are disappearing as well. Save English dialects. Save all the dialects. Right. Okay, that's vague enough. One thing I want to say, one of the things I want to say, LL, whether broad or slender, in Munster has collapsed into slender L, so that you can pronounce either one of them. It doesn't change the meaning of the word nowadays. So there's no, in Munster, for example, there's no difference. Well, in most of Munster, that's what I was about to talk about. There's no difference between bile, bille, which is a word for a tree, bille, and bille, bille, which is well, like a bill. So bille and bille, but, and this is the interesting point, in North Clare, that distinction was still maintained by some speakers, because that distinction is maintained in Connemara. And there was once tiny spot in East Cork, Ballymacoda, and they pronounced LL, whether broad or slender, as LD. So, for example, they'd say buchelt, boy, or they'd say a wall, falda, whereas other dialects would say falla. Nondig for nondig, Christmas, kulda for kulla, sleep. Basically, LL became LD, which is a useful distinction because there aren't that many words in Irish that have LD, and if they are, they so that's LL. One thing I want to say about broad L is that in Unreen or Unraing, Ring in Waterford, the older speakers used to pronounce their broad L's as a uvular L. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the uvular R of French. Forgive my attempts. But actually, of course, there are different dialects that pronounce it as a uvular fricative and a uvular trill. Won't go into that. But basically, against the uvula, which is that thing that hangs down, that's the uvula. It means the little grape in Latin. But broad L in Marine or Nuraing was traditionally uvular amongst some speakers. There was supposedly there was a difference between how the fishermen spoke and how the farmers spoke, because they were like Ballinangowl, for example, means the home or the homestead of the town of the foreigners. But a lot of the older speakers, and perhaps some of the younger speakers, who aren't afraid of scary non-English sounds, would pronounce it Ballinangowl. So basically, instead of the tongue being raised to the or being raised to the velum, it's actually raised further back to the, or retracted to the uvula. So, well, I plan on, if I have time, putting up a little Halloween, a couple of things for Halloween about, well, from on the Rhine, so you'll hear this uvular L from a man called Mike. Oh, there's a great book. I've drifted far away. By Martin Verling, called Leabhar Mike. Oh, I strongly advise you to buy it. But very interesting. Oh, like he says, oh, for LA father. Oh, with a uvular L. That only seems to have existed in around southern Waterford. It wasn't in northern Waterford or eastern Waterford. Although it did pop up occasionally in Mayo as well. And you'd hear it in the old Blasket speakers, actually. Yeah, well, I won't get into it. Sorry, I'm coming back now. Or, let's move on to or. And I'll stop there then, maybe, because how long is this video? 46? Let's see. Sorry, I know it's particularly rambly, even more rambly than the last video. Again, food for thought. Now, again, you have or, but you have to think there are 4 different kinds of or in theory. In practice, things are always a bit more complicated. So, you have, let's start at the back. You've broad, strong or, ru. You have weak, broad or, ru. You have, so much to talk about. You slender, weak or, that's a complicated sound. Talk about it. And you also have strong, slender or. Strong, slender or in every single dialect of Gaelic, basically Irish, Manx, Scottish. It is all Gaelic. I would recommend the term Gaelic, perhaps, or even maybe Gaelic. There's a term Gaelic, but that sounds a bit too clinical. Gaelic is, again, I'll talk about that another time. Yeah, so slender, strong or, basically or and slender has, now it's important to differentiate here. Strong, slender or turned into strong, broad or. So in theory, what I would suggest the sound of slender, strong or was in Old Irish was probably a palatalized trill. Like r, which is like the check or hatchet. But that r lost its palatalization and just became r, a rolled, a trilled or. Now, that rolled or, as a strong, broad or, has merged into the sound of weak, single, broad or ro. But there are some dialects in Ulster, still again amongst the the less anglicised speakers that maintain a distinction between, for example, a ro, which means her wheel, or a ro, her wheel, and a ro, his wheel, because of course o causes shevu, it causes softening or weakening. So the strong ro at the start of the word, when you say have o plus shevu, meaning his, so a ro with a weak r means his wheel. Or that was the traditionally the pronunciation, or traditionally, I'm sure that this distinction has disappeared for a long, long time in most dialects. Although I would recommend, and I'll talk about this in a later video, that that the distinction between strong or r and slender and weak or r when broad be taught in schools, because it's easy for children then to spell. For example, the difference between cor, a turn or a twist, and the word cor, which is a word for a heron. God bless us and save us, as old Mrs. Davis, they're trying to persuade us that heron are fish. Sorry, I'll come back now. Yeah, but okay, I won't get into that. But the mistake and or of all sounds in Irish is, oh yeah, slender or, talk about slender or. I have to go in a while. Or is likely to be pronounced in English as the r. It's not r. You'll hear it in Shannon sometimes, but only in singing. And now in more anglicised speakers. Listen to Nuacht, the news in Irish, and you look out for the speakers that use the English r. Well, of course, when I say English r, the Americans use r, retroflex r, quite a lot of the time. Whereas the English and the Irish tend to use r. Slight difference. Neither of which is used in Irish. There's also, there's loads to talk about. There's also a uvular r, that I mentioned, but okay, I won't talk about that. I'll talk about that another time. Slender r, I should say a quick word about that. It is. At the start of a word, of course, a consonant is always strong. So you'll always have strong slender r. Remember, strong slender r became strong broad r, and in almost every dialect outside of Ulster, probably, North Leinster is up for debate. Or actually, perhaps all of Leinster is up for debate. Won't get into it yet. Basically, yeah, so or at the start of a word, even if it's followed by a slender vowel or a tongue front vowel, that or will always be pronounced broad at the start of a word. In the middle of the word, there are two different pronunciations. There's a palatalized tap. So can I think of one where it's in the middle? Midi, like speed, or it can also be a word for madness. Midi, which to English speakers it probably sounds more like a D, and it's better. I would recommend English speakers, if they have difficulty with the Irish midi, that they pronounce it as a D rather than saying mirror, or mira, which is pure English. So no mira, but midi would be the closest English sound. But then, okay, well, basically just get the real Irish sound for what it is. There's also a fricative pronunciation of slender or miri. And what is very interesting is that in Ossory, so basically all of Kilkenny, actually almost all of Kilkenny, there was one small area, I think was it John's Well? No, I'm the wrong place. For now, if you're from Kilkenny, just assume that all slender R's were J, so like the J in French, or the S in treasure, or the G in regime, or the J in the Taj Mahal, or remember that English spelling is stupid. And sorry, we're back. Also included West, Laois, Queen's County, so places like Ahabo, there's a place, Clorthan, which is pronounced Closhan by the locals, probably still is. There were other places as well around there. So basically, if you're from West Laois, well, it's all Ossory Irish, so find out about Ossory Irish. I'll make a video about it sometime, and I'll publish a book about it. Okay, I don't want to go on to the velar consonants. Just very quickly, again, if the consonant is slender, the tongue is going to be in the position of y, so slender k, as opposed to broad k. G, g, gu, he, and what's on man? Oh yeah, ye, and ru. And then ng is just ni, so ni, which doesn't happen according to the start of a word in English, so English speakers find it difficult. Ni, and mu. That's a brief summary. Maybe it'll do actually, because those ones aren't too complicated, except that English speakers, one of the most basic mistakes that even people who are fluent in Irish make. Slender CH is like in German, ich, in all its dialectal variations, ich. So lechele, you often hear people saying lechele when they're trying, but that's the sound of the broad CH. But what English speakers tend to do is that they tend to pronounce CH as just C. There's a difference between a cat, her cat, and a chat, his cat. So you have to make the difference, or else we'll just make the difference. In my name, D. Okay, look, I'll go on to shut up, and I might make another video later on. We'll see if I have time. Okay, sorry for the rambling. Like and subscribe. Tamil.